In early July 2025, a disturbing series of videos began circulating through Vietnam's darkest online spaces, the dark web, encrypted Telegram channels, and shock forums. The footage showed a masked man and a bound victim who appeared disturbingly compliant, as if participating in a staged beheading fantasy. The clips would soon earn a chilling name, the Vietnamese Butcher. While most scrolled past in horror or disbelief, a growing community of internet sleuths refused to look away. Throughout summer and autumn, these investigators combed through fragments of video, scene details, background clues, and forum activity. Over weeks of painstaking open-source investigation, matching floor tiles, architectural features, tattoos, birthmarks, and leaked conversations, they compiled a comprehensive 88-page dossier that pinpointed a suspect and pieced together a narrative too chilling to ignore. On the 29th of November 2025, police arrested Duong Van Sang in connection with the murder of Xuan, a case that had remained unresolved for nearly a year. But how did a ragtag group of online detectives, armed only with screenshots and obsessive attention to detail, build a case so compelling that authorities were forced to act, ultimately leading to an arrest? Let's find out.
Welcome to the Factatorium podcast, where we talk about the most fascinating and the weirdest stuff in the world around us. I'm Ken.
And I'm Jamie. Come hang out with us. Okay, let's unpack a case that forces us to reconcile the most ancient forms of human brutality with the hyper-modern tools of the digital age.
It really does.
We're talking today about the Duong Van Sang murder case in Lang Son, Vietnam. And this is a case where true crime was solved not just by police, but by an army of citizen detectives armed with, internet connections and open source intelligence.
And this is so much more than just another shocking crime story. This deep dive is, I think, a critical examination of what investigation looks like in the 21st century.
Yeah.
We have this unprecedented stack of sources. You've got official police reports, formal press conference announcements, sitting right alongside this massive, completely unauthorized body of evidence compiled by these amateur web sleuths.
So our mission here is to meticulously parse the hard facts of the formal investigation, the who, what, when, and where, and really compare them against the highly detailed, often graphic, and let's be honest, decidedly unsanctioned digital tracking efforts.
Right. We need to trace exactly where these two paths converged.
And, critically, where they violently clashed.
It's a fascinating study. You have information control on one side versus this decentralized investigation on the other, and it raises these profound questions about civic responsibility in an era of, perpetual surveillance.
So to ground ourselves, we have to start with the verifiable facts.
Always. The official timeline and setting the scene.
Let's begin with the principal figures and, of course, the scene of the crime. Starting with the suspect. The man eventually charged was Duong Van Sang. He was born in 1968, which makes him 57 years old at the time.
And right there, that's the first layer of complexity that makes this case so deeply disturbing. Sang was not some, fringe figure living on the margins.
Not at all.
He was a former senior government official. He held the position of Deputy Head of Market Management Team Number 4 in Lang Son Province.
That location, Lang Son, is crucial. It's a mountainous area in the northeast of Vietnam, right up near the border with China. About, 160 kilometers from Hanoi. So what does that role, deputy head of the market management team, actually signify in a place like that?
It signifies authority. It signifies public trust, high credibility. Market management teams in these border regions are responsible for regulation, preventing smuggling, ensuring fair commerce, basically maintaining order.
So he's a pillar of the community.
A huge pillar of local power and respect.
Yeah.
For a man occupying a position like that to be simultaneously engaged in the depravity we're about to discuss, that's the profound inversion of trust that just shocked the nation. He had this seemingly polished, wholesome cover.
Then we have the victim, Nguyen Xuan, much younger, born in 1989, making him 36 years old.
Right.
He was originally from Nguyen province, which is nowhere near Lang Son. And from what we know, Dad had been away from his family home for about a decade, living a sort of transient life.
Yeah, working as a laborer or fishmonger. So you have this stark contrast, a 57-year-old established, geographically rooted official.
And a much younger, more transient laborer from a completely different part of the country.
And the connection according to the official investigation, was purely digital. They met on social media around 2020.
And their relationship.
It was reportedly based on what sources describe as distorted, deviant conversations. We're talking about sexually morbid or, perverted topics. This online relationship was the dark underpinning of their eventual and fatal real-world encounter.
The murder itself took place on January 25th, 2025. This timeline detail is so important because the crime was committed and then hidden for almost a full year before public attention finally exploded in November.
And the location. The location speaks to Sang's confidence and calculation. The murder occurred at his place of work.
At his government job.
Yes. The office of the Market Management Team No. 4 in Hulung. Using his government office as the site for this brutal act implies he felt completely untouchable. He was leveraging his professional environment for cover and maybe even for access to facilities for the cleanup.
And the cleanup, or the post-crime actions, that became a key part of the official investigation. Authorities reported that Sang made calculated, methodical efforts to clean the crime scene, destroy evidence, and dispose of the body.
See, this wasn't a crime of passion followed by panic.
No.
This was a sophisticated cover-up attempt. The methodical nature, cleaning the office, removing the body, trying to destroy every digital and physical trace, it all suggests extensive forethought. He was actively trying to eliminate all evidence. And that later became a huge point of analysis for both the official police and the amateur investigators trying to reverse engineer his actions.
So this long silence was finally broken almost 10 months later. The case just explodes into public view on the evening of November 29th, 2025. What was the catalyst for that sudden, very visible police response?
That's the pivot point. While the official accounts just say they detected information via online monitoring, the physical scene was incredibly dramatic.
Yeah.
And that night, dozens of officers and official government vehicles just descended on the Market Management Team headquarters. They immediately cordoned off the entire area, blocked roads, restricted all access, which of course caused massive traffic congestion, and fueled this immediate, intense public speculation about what horrific secret was being contained inside.
The public pressure and, I imagine, the evidence they were gathering must have been overwhelming. The official charges came almost immediately after that.
Just a few days later, the Langsan Provincial Police held a press conference on December 3rd and formally announced they had charged and detained Duong Van Sang on suspicion of murder.
And they cited the specific legal grounding for it?
Yes, Clause 1, Article 123 of the 2015 Penal Code. And for our listeners, it's vital to grasp how severe this charge is in Vietnam.
It's the most serious there is.
It is. Clause 1 covers murder and carries potential penalties from 12 to 20 years, life imprisonment, or, significantly, the death penalty. The speed and the high visibility of this announcement just days after that dramatic cordon-off, it just highlighted the immediate and severe gravity of the case.
And the police efforts were recognized at the highest levels, which you don't always see.
No, it's a rare institutional acknowledgement. On December 9th, the Deputy Minister of Public Security, Senior Lieutenant General Nguyen Van Long, issued a formal letter of commendation to the Langsan Provincial Police.
What did it say?
It was explicit. It praised their professional, swift, and decisive investigative efforts in solving a particularly brutal murder case. But here's the crucial detail, and this is our transition into the next part of this story.
The mechanism of detection.
Exactly. The deputy minister acknowledged that they promptly detected information via online monitoring. This isn't just generic praise. This is the state acknowledging that the digital sphere, the realm of citizen sleuthing and viral content, was instrumental in catalyzing or at least accelerating the official investigation.
That sets the perfect stage for Section 2, the dark side of the digital age. Extremism and this citizen detective phenomenon. So let's start by digging into the victim's reported online activity. We need to understand the why behind this grotesque encounter.
Right. The source material paints a picture of a man, Xuan, who was deeply entrenched in some extreme online communities. Unofficial reports, which were later corroborated by the Sleuths' findings, suggest Dat was highly active in what were called kink e-forums.
And he was operating under a chilling alias.
Just Dat beheading.
An alias that literally prefigures the act that was committed against him.
Precisely. His whole online presence was steeped in what sources call the death wish, and specific detailed fantasies, including being beheaded. There were even rumors, which circulated widely on social media, of cannibalism fantasies.
But we should be clear here.
It is crucial to maintain the distinction. Official law enforcement reports did not corroborate the cannibalism claims, But the connection to these extreme online forums, the morbid nature of the relationship, it provides the necessary disturbing context for the crime itself.
So this wasn't just a physical crime. It was the documented, realized fulfillment of a dark, shared online fantasy. And this material, it wasn't hidden. It was circulated almost immediately.
Almost immediately. The crime happens in January 2025, but video clips and digital images of Dat's final moments began appearing online as early as February.
Wow.
This graphic content was available for a fee on various platforms, which tells you about the immediate monetization of the act. We're talking about Telegram channels, the dark web, even niche forums within the massive Chinese platform Baidu Tiba.
And the circulation didn't stop there.
No. Later, in late July, additional videos, equally disturbing, featuring a masked Vietnamese butcher were also posted. The identity of the uploader is complex. It gets tangled up in the psychological warfare later on, but authorities dedicated a huge amount of effort to scrubbing this content from the internet, which confirms both the material's existence and its extreme nature.
This brings us to the counterforce, the rise of the online sleuths. This is really the 21st century evolution of the amateur investigator.
It is. The citizen detective phenomenon involves motivated individuals who use OSINT open source intelligence techniques.
So just breaking that down, OSINT is basically gathering and analyzing publicly available information.
Exactly. Social media posts, public records, satellite images, news archives, anything to generate insights. In this case, the internet removed all the geographical limits. These individuals, mostly based hundreds of kilometers away from Langsun, were able to remotely conduct a detailed forensic investigation.
And the central figure in this decentralized effort was someone called Kito Mo.
A curious person. Kito Mo, a YouTuber active since 2017, became the focal point. He had over 21,000 Facebook followers, 87,000 YouTube subscribers. His platform provided the reach and the coordination needed.
And you really committed to it.
An astonishing amount of time and resources. He posted a massive series, 8 main episodes and 4 special segments over 3 months. This wasn't just casual speculation. This was a dedicated, detailed, long-form investigation that got massive attention. Some of his videos hit nearly 500,000 views.
And his conclusion, which he reached before the official arrest, was startlingly accurate.
It was prophetic. Based on his deep analysis of the digital footprint and the perpetrator's movements, Kito Mo concluded that the killer was someone with a high-profile and wholesome cover, but inside was a bloodthirsty devil.
Which precisely matched the profile of Deputy Head Duong Van Sang.
Exactly. Another key coordination point was the public Facebook group, OSINT and Cyber Investigation Vietnam. It grew rapidly to 1,800 members, and it basically functioned as a real-time crowdsourcing hub for evidence analysis.
The combined efforts of this whole community resulted in what became known as the 88-page document. This was the definitive viral file that circulated in mid-November, right before the police made their move.
That document was the culmination of all their work. It compiled the graphic video evidence, the detailed OSINT deductions, and it specifically named Duong Van Sang as the prime suspect.
And the sheer volume and explicit nature of the content in those 88 pages ensured it went viral.
It spread like wildfire. It generated this massive wave of public attention and outrage that, as the official commendation suggests, effectively forced the hand of the formal investigation. It led to Sang's arrest within weeks.
Let's get into the specifics of how they did it. What kind of micro clues were these amateur investigators able to put together to create such a compelling case?
Their methodology was meticulous. I mean, truly. They started by collating personal identifiers, like analyzing low-resolution video stills to spot a unique birthmark on Sang. They identified a specific tattoo mentioned in leaked forum conversations. But the real genius was their forensic analysis of the physical crime scene using only the leaked videos.
Give us an example of that physical forensic work.
Okay, so they examined minute details in the background. The pattern on the floor tiles, the construction of the window frames, the specific color of the walls, and critically, they identified the cleaning agents.
Dish soap.
The Chinese-labeled dish soap, the Lum brand.
Yeah.
Now, some initial observers speculated this meant the crime happened in China. But the OSINT experts determined that the Lum brand is widely sold in Vietnam, specifically in the northern border areas like Lang Son. It was a powerful clue that tied the crime scene geographically right back to Sang's administrative region.
So they were not just seeing objects, they were using these common household items to establish economic and geographic constraints. They were basically triangulating the suspect's location.
That's a perfect way to put it. They were turning common items into specific geographic identifiers, something police often do with evidence like, soil samples or specific cigarette butts. In the digital age, those items become floor tiles and brand-name dish soap visible in a low-res video reflection.
But with this immense power of decentralized investigation comes severe danger, the dangers of vigilantism and misinformation, and we saw an immediate sharp reaction from the authorities to this digital chaos.
That's the critical boundary. Legal experts across Vietnam, like Dr. Duong Van Sang and lawyer Tran Dai Lam, were quick to emphasize the razor-thin line between citizens providing helpful leads and, well, engaging in outright criminality.
What did they say specifically?
Lam pointed out that amateurs lack the legal mandate. They don't have the tools. They don't have the training for lawful evidence gathering. It makes their work prone to subjective speculation and serious ethical breaches.
So what were the explicit legal consequences for crossing that line?
The law in Vietnam is very clear on this. Spreading gruesome, violent, or false content can lead to serious administrative penalties or even criminal prosecution. Dr. Xuan specifically highlighted laws against spreading information that incites violence or attempts to impersonate the judicial authority of the state.
So even if your intention is good, you could be breaking the law.
Exactly. Even if you think you're catching a killer, damaging reputations, obstructing the police process, or inducing public panic are all serious offenses.
And the police response was immediate and focused on controlling the narrative.
It was. The Tien Hung Commune Police, in the victim's hometown, issued an urgent warning. They urged local residents to immediately delete the 88-page document, to report accounts that were spreading it, and to supervise children to prevent exposure to what they called toxic content.
Which shows how saturated this stuff was becoming.
Right, and the Ministry of Public Security raised this to a national directive. They urged all media outlets, all social media users, to exercise extreme caution, warning against sharing any violent images or videos. They underscored that violators would face severe legal repercussions. This wasn't just a local concern, it was a national effort to suppress the circulation of this barbarism and regain control of the information ecosystem.
And we have two very specific examples of administrative action taken against individuals for exactly this behavior. It really emphasizes the state's dual approach, thanking online monitoring while simultaneously cracking down on uncontrolled online action.
They moved fast. On December 10th, the Hu Lung Commune Police acted. The first individual, NVA, was fined a substantial 7.5 million VND, which is roughly $310.
And what was his offense?
He was live streaming unverified details about the case on November 29th. The police determined it was disruptive to public order and caused undue alarm. He was ordered to remove the content immediately.
And the second case is, well, it's almost unbelievable.
VTL was summoned by police for a live stream titled, and I'm quoting here, "Recreating the Crime Scene."
Wow.
Yeah. This kind of performance or simulation, which risks sensationalizing or misrepresenting the facts, was completely unacceptable to the authorities. VTL was required to delete the content and had to sign a pledge promising not to repeat the offense. These penalties were a clear public signal.
The signal being the state intends to protect the integrity of its official investigation.
Exactly, by controlling the flow of digital information, even when that information was instrumental in the arrest.
This sets the stage for Section 3, the deepest part of our deep dive, dissecting the digital investigation itself. The citizen investigation, spearheaded by Kito Mo, moved far beyond simple crowdsourcing. It went into genuine, high-level forensic analysis.
This is where amateur curiosity truly stepped into the professional realm. Kito Mo used techniques like 3D rendering to meticulously analyze the 3 distinct videos that were leaked and circulated online. This detailed analysis, scene by scene, allowed them to deduce the location, the nature of the relationship, and the perpetrator's calculated methodology.
Let's break down video 1, the rehearsal bedroom. What physical environment did the sleuths establish here?
So the environment provided the first major geographic clue. Behind the victim, they identified 2 large metal cabinets.
Okay.
These are standard fixtures in many offices or government agencies in Vietnam, though sometimes just used for storage. The fact that they were placed sort of haphazardly suggested they had been moved to create a temporary, concealed backdrop.
So that lent credence to the idea that this was a makeshift residence or a staged rehearsal area within Sang's office complex.
Precisely. And the interaction between Sang and Dat was noted as being unusually calm.
Right, they weren't strangers.
No. The victim's surprising calmness strongly suggested a prearranged agreement or a specific morbid script was being followed. It connects right back to Dat's dark online fantasies.
what key objects in that first video pointed toward a domestic or temporary residency setup?
They identified a large, clean wooden cutting block, a foot. This particular block was noted as being different from the one used later, and crucially, it was placed on a package or a bundle.
Why?
The investigators theorized this bundle was used to precisely adjust the victim's height relative to the camera to make sure the focus was centered. They also spotted an inox, a stainless steel chair, a black backpack, and a hairdryer, all consistent with the temporarily occupied space. The unifying hypothesis was this was a premeditated rehearsal scene filmed domestically in Vietnam.
Okay, moving to video 2, the act bathroom. The location here becomes hyper-specific. What forensic clues help them narrow down the geography?
The setting was a small, damp, poorly lit bathroom. The key identifiers were the ubiquitous, aged white wall tiles and a specific popular pattern of floor tiles commonly sold in Vietnamese hardware stores, particularly in northern provinces. This immediately established a local, domestic context.
And the objects used in the commission of the act were disturbingly localized.
Exactly. They identified a red tarp or tablecloth spread beneath the victim. This is a common item in Vietnamese markets or homes, often used to protect floors from liquids. There was a green plastic chair, which you see everywhere in the country, and an orange electric socket strip on the floor, indicating temporary wiring.
There were slippers too, right?
A pair of white and black Adidas slippers, widely sold by small vendors, were also spotted.
And tell us about the wooden block in the scene. It was different.
It was a different wooden block, a larger, heavier thut used here as a headrest. Its size and weight strongly suggested it was purpose-built for butchering or used in a commercial kitchen setting. And crucially, a small hatchet or axe was visible nearby.
And that wasn't random.
Not at all. The sleuths realized this wasn't just a random tool. They linked it to the victim's own online avatar and his kink forum interests. It implied it was deliberately included as a symbolic tool for the script.
The filming preparation here confirms the level of premeditation.
The preparation was intense. At least 4 phones were meticulously positioned at various angles, confirming a detailed, multi-angle recording effort. Furthermore, when they cross-referenced this scene, local contacts in neighboring areas like Cambodia explicitly denied seeing these specific, localized household items in border areas.
Which lent powerful credence to the location being domestic, specifically Lang Son, Vietnam.
It did.
Finally, video 3, the aftermath kitchen. This scene provided the most compelling evidence linking the perpetrator to an established, potentially commercial environment.
The environment was identified as a kitchen based on the floor tiles. Old-style gray and white pattern tiles that were definitively no longer sold.
So they dated the house with the tiles.
They did. It helped date the construction of the house to the pre-2010 era, a huge clue for narrowing the search parameters in Lang Son. The presence of a yellow back door with a specific bolt type suggested the kitchen was located at the rear of the house, which is consistent with older Vietnamese architectural layouts you'd find in northern working-class provinces.
And the objects discovered painted a clear picture of a dining or small eatery setup.
Absolutely. They noted a round inox table, common in Vietnamese kitchens and eateries. Again, 3 phones were present, so the documentation continued through the aftermath. They identified a small gas torch, a red chili sauce bottle of a recognizable brand, a 350-milliliter Lavi mineral water bottle, and a blue plastic napkin holder, all staples of casual Vietnamese restaurants or food stalls.
And the cabinet.
The presence of a large number of plastic plates stored in an aluminum and glass cabinet further supported the eatery hypothesis.
And now the gruesome contents, which the sleuths analyzed with a kind of clinical precision.
A red plastic basin contained what was described as dismembered body parts, chillingly arranged very neatly. A large inox pot contained other parts, what the sleuths clinically termed the extended parts of the movement and grasping apparatus.
The limbs.
The limbs. They also extracted medical evidence from the footage, noting dark spots on the victim's respiratory system, which implied heavy smoking or maybe pneumonia.
And the cleaning clue ties back to the geographic specificity we talked about earlier.
Yes. The Chinese-labeled dish soap, the Lum brand, was visible near the sink, used for the extensive cleanup. This reinforced the Lang Son connection, since that brand is easily accessible in that border region.
The final shot in the video revealed the most chilling possibility and the ultimate failure of the perpetrator's concealment.
The reflection. On the shiny surface of the inox pot lid, the perpetrator almost exposed himself. However, the room lighting was strategically insufficient, so it only captured a dark, vague streak. But despite the failure to clearly identify him, The final macabre act solidified the case for extreme moral depravity.
What did he do?
The perpetrator chillingly reconnected the command and control components of the victim, the head on the inox table. The sleuths suggested this was framed as a report or result of a mission, implying a psychological component of completing a task for this dark network.
So after synthesizing all these micro details across the 3 videos, what did the citizen investigators conclude about the unified location?
Their strongest hypothesis was that all 3 scenes, the bedroom rehearsal, the bathroom, the kitchen, could plausibly exist in a single, older, semi-commercial Vietnamese house. This fit the profile of a location like a former small shop, maybe a bonsai or fertilizer shop, that had been converted into a storage facility or temporary residence. It explains the mix of commercial inox tables and aged residential floor tiles.
And this detailed, almost professional forensic breakdown is what gave their 88-page document such undeniable, persuasive credibility.
It was.
That forensic analysis was only half the battle, though. The perpetrator was engaged in a sophisticated digital disinformation campaign at the same time. Let's pivot now to the digital suspect leads and the psychological warfare that unfolded online.
This was a high-stakes game of digital chess. I mean, the web sleuths weren't just analyzing videos, they were fighting off active manipulation. We have 3 key figures who muddied the waters. First, someone named Li.
Okay, what was his role?
Initially, this individual provided incredibly accurate, granular details about the victim. His name, hometown, family background, personal habits. It led many sleuths to believe he was an insider, maybe a close acquaintance or an observer of the dark network.
But his narrative quickly fractured.
Completely. As the online scrutiny intensified, Philia began releasing confusing and contradictory information. He started naming different fabricated killers like Chung and Pham Chung Keen. The prevailing analysis among Kito Mo's team was that Philia was deliberately trying to derail the investigation and sow chaos. It suggested he was either part of the dark network or being actively manipulated by the real perpetrators to create false leads.
Next, the deeply unsettling figure of Hoa Troy, an entity that operated under a female profile.
Hoa Troy is terrifying because she represents the long-term psychological aspect of this network. She operated under a female profile and had been posting gloomy, ambiguous, and deviant content consistently since 2015.
And there was a pattern.
A very specific pattern. The sleuths noticed that both Hoa Troy and the victim, Dat, habitually ended many of their posts with a distinct exclamation mark.
Oh.
This led to the chilling theory that the killer, or the group, may have taken control of Dat's account after the murder, using Hoa Troy as a coordinated associated persona.
And her activity revealed a predatory recruitment pattern.
Absolutely. The sleuths traced her profile back to a Bat Trang ceramics group between 2014 and 2015. More importantly, she exhibited documented predatory behavior. Sources detailed attempts to lure vulnerable, often depressed individuals, like someone they called C in 2022 and D as far back as 2015, into dangerous decisions or meetings in Saigon.
So this wasn't an isolated incident.
The evidence suggested the Sangdat crime was the extreme endpoint of a sophisticated, long-term network targeting vulnerable people.
The third figure, Kid Jopper or Skit Jopper, the anonymous leaker, played the role of the unreliable narrator.
This anonymous source released seemingly crucial yet often conflicting clues. They first linked the suspect to Tran Phom Hung and then later to Cam Than Chung. But crucially, they provided a specific geographic address in Lang Son province that aligned perfectly with the video evidence, near a large market, a river, and the highway.
Which accounted for the background noises in the videos.
Exactly. The loud traffic, the dog barking, it all fit.
And the backstory they provided for the victim was bizarre.
They claimed Dat was part of a gene mutation chain and had previously acted as a butcher for others before becoming a victim himself. But the sleuths eventually concluded that this anonymous leaker was likely lying about their close relationship with the group, possibly having been fed misinformation by the real perpetrators to throw the investigation off track with those early incorrect names.
The tension must have been immense. The amateur investigators are trying to prove their theory while simultaneously battling multiple streams of coordinated disinformation. How did they finally achieve the breakthrough that forced Sang's hand?
It came down to a sophisticated psychological trap. The breakthrough occurred when a friend of the Kito Mo investigators psychologically provoked the perpetrator, who was operating online under a different identity we know as A.
And A was watching them.
He was. This identity A was actively trying to spy on the investigator's progress file, They were watching the watchers.
So what were the micro clues that finally collapsed A's anonymity and pointed directly to Sang?
The OSINT team noticed A had the initials LS Sang in his username. More critically, A shared an old post referencing the name San Trung, which immediately connected to the earlier anonymous leaks about Cam Tan Chung. They then traced A via Instagram to an account called Than Trung 1111, which they confirmed was highly active in dark, violent forums.
So the names that the anonymous leakers had grubbed, Tan Trung, Chung, they weren't the real killer, but they were related to the killer's internal network or his digital persona.
Exactly. The names were clues, just not the primary suspect. The final step was social network mapping. They noticed that A's Facebook friend list was highly unusual. It was dominated by people with the surname Dun, including a well-respected figure, Duong Sang, the deputy head of market management team number 4.
The culmination was the sting.
Kito Mo posted a strategic lure online, claiming the killer was definitively identified and the police were closing in. The result was instantaneous digital panic from the suspect. Sang's online accounts immediately deleted relevant posts, and his online persona, A, became erratic and desperate, trying to arrange a meeting with the investigator in Langsun.
That loss of composure and the desperate digital scramble was the critical error that confirmed the sleuth's identity.
And that collective effort, the forensic analysis, the 88-page document, the massive online pressure, and the psychological trap, it all forced the official investigation's hand, leading directly to Duong Van Sang's arrest after he lost control of his carefully constructed digital facade.
It's a remarkable example of how a determined group of citizens can leverage technology to expose a powerful figure.
But it immediately raises questions about the aftermath and who gets to control the narrative.
That moves us perfectly into Section 4. Examining the aftermath and the state's efforts to manage public security. Let's circle back to those administrative penalties. Despite the successful identification of the suspect, why was the state so keen to find the digital spreaders?
This is the inherent conflict of the case. We have to reiterate the legal environment in Vietnam. Spreading information that disrupts public order or contains toxic content is prohibited. The administrative actions against NVA and VTL serve a very specific institutional purpose beyond simple punishment.
What was that purpose?
It was a mechanism for the state to regain absolute control over the information narrative. The fines against NVA for live streaming unverified details and the requirement for VPL to delete his recreating the crime scene video sent a clear regulatory signal.
The signal being, you provided the information, but the state conducts the investigation.
Precisely. First, to protect the integrity of the official investigation, unverified or sensationalized details could compromise evidence or taint witness testimony. And second, perhaps more importantly, it was to prevent further social panic and the incitement of violent or deviant thought. The content being circulated was barbaric, and the state had a vested interest in limiting its dissemination to maintain public order.
Yet, the law enforcement agency itself received high praise for using the very tools that these citizens mastered.
That's the duality we're grappling with here. Revisiting the commendation from Deputy Minister Nguyen Van Long, it was a significant institutional acknowledgement of success. He praised the Lang Son police for their speed in solving a particularly brutal murder case.
And he specifically mentioned their methods.
He did. By explicitly noting the importance of online monitoring in the initial detection, the Ministry of Public Security officially sanctioned the digital sphere as a legitimate, necessary tool for modern law enforcement. They were implicitly validating the method, even if they were penalizing the amateur execution.
So we have established that citizens provided the key information, but the authorities needed to control the process. This brings us to the core legacy of the Sangdat case, defining the critical boundary of citizen sleuthing.
This case is a textbook example of civic responsibility meeting its legal limits. Criminology expert Dr. Dao Trung Hu was clear in acknowledging the positive side. Citizens provided key leads, they identified Sang, and they demonstrated a powerful civic duty. He noted that modern society requires community participation to track down criminals, especially in the digital space.
But the caution from the legal community remains paramount.
Absolutely. Lawyer Durande Lam and Dr. Hu both hammered home the critical boundary. The law must ultimately resolve the case. Citizen involvement must function as the eyes and ears for authorities, providing information to competent bodies for official verification.
It can never be a substitute for the formal investigative process.
Never. Why? Because self-proclaimed detectives risk revealing investigative secrets, obstructing the chain of evidence, or inciting public panic and violence.
Nguyen, a cybersecurity specialist, he offered a concise summary of the challenge, didn't he?
He did. He noted that in the digital age, completely banning citizen investigations is impossible and maybe even undesirable given how effective they were in this case. Therefore, the focus has to shift from prohibition to providing clear guidance and establishing legally defined boundaries for engagement. The knowledge is decentralized, but the authority must remain centralized.
So if we step back from the specific details of Lang Son, what does the Sang case tell us about the broader implications of digital anonymity and decentralized information?
It screams a warning about technology acting as a powerful amplifier for human behavior, regardless of its moral alignment. On the positive side, it facilitates OSINT and civic responsibility, allowing ordinary individuals to mobilize pressure for justice against corruption and depravity. But on the dark side, it enables the formation of sophisticated, dark, anonymous networks dedicated to extremely dangerous and deviant ideologies.
It allows individuals like Sang, a man of power, to completely obfuscate his true identity.
Exactly. Behind multiple layers of digital camouflage for years, the digital age not only allows for double lives, it empowers them.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. The chilling notion that Duong Van Sang was able to maintain his polished, high-profile, and wholesome cover, deputy head of market management, while simultaneously perpetrating and documenting a brutal murder rooted in these sophisticated, dark online networks. That digital double life, which almost allowed him to escape detection entirely, serves as a stark warning about the sheer duplicity enabled by the perceived safety of internet anonymity.
And this leads us directly to the final thought we want to leave with you, our listener. Kito Mo, the central figure in the citizen investigation, concluded his series with a deeply provocative statement. He said, "Justice was served by law, but the investigation was driven by curiosity."
Given the immense pressure, the sophisticated disinformation campaigns orchestrated by the perpetrator and his associates, Phila, Hoachwai, and the constant risk of legal action, what is the moral cost for the amateur investigator who steps across the line from merely curious to obsessed?
And what does it take for you to be absolutely certain of the truth when facing such a massive, manipulated stream of digital information? Especially when the information you trust the most comes from an anonymous online sleuth rather than an official press conference. That is the information challenge this case leaves us all with.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Sang case.